you know, right after college, I would go out and meet people, and I would just be like right straight out of UCLA, I would be like, oh, you know, I'm freelancing, I got my hands in a couple of baskets, stuff like that. This is what I'm interested in, and like, just by virtue of our common interests, I think like they like I was at this mixer and they liked my energy, and that like won her over enough to give me her business card. So like you never know where the conversation will lead you. Struck up a conversation with someone who's interesting, and tried to like at the art walk, I started talking about blogs, and like it could have been a magical connection, but I messed it up. But always try to open up your mind to like creating these connections instead of like shutting down a conversation and being like, oh, I'm not working right now, or I don't know, and just talk about your interests, see if what strikes. If that doesn't work with that person, move on to the next person, and like start talking to them and see if you connect with that. Like never, especially when you want to be an effective networker, you got to keep on like trying and putting in the effort. So yeah, and like it's kind of interesting, but like a mixer is like anything else in life. If you have really good energy and if you're likable, people will gravitate towards you and they will want to give you opportunities.
Thank you. One of the things that I got out of that is that you know, to try something different. Oftentimes, especially after like a long day of work or job searching or school, we get home and we get comfortable, and all that we want to do is eat dinner and watch TV or read a book and do whatever. And sometimes we get a phone call to go out and do something. Go out and do it, whatever it is, because oftentimes opportunity exists there that you wouldn't have thought. So sometimes you get invited to an art walk where you would have just been sewing, for example. I don't know if that actually happened. So definitely take advantage of opportunity when it's presented. And on that note, you have only the opportunity presented to you. So Juliet and Catherine, do you want to elaborate?
Sure.
On how opportunity
Do you want to start?
is only presented?
Are you going to just do first?
Doesn't knock twice.
I'll work around whatever you do.
Okay. Well, this point kind of talks about when you leave a company or when someone else leaves a company that you work at. And I would just always recommend that you leave on a good note. Of course, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but you definitely want to leave on the best note possible. Develop, good relationships with your bosses
Which also
and
means
your
don't get
coworkers.
fired.
Try not to get fired. Because your references are going to be really important to you throughout your life, and you just want to keep good, consistent references. A little anecdote about this is we were conducting an interview last year, and the person we were interviewing kind of started going off about her boss and all the things wrong with him.
Current boss, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was her.
It doesn't matter. Go on.
Basically, yeah, just trash talking her boss and giving us his name as well. So you never want to trash talk your boss in an interview. You never want to give his name either. And at that point, we were just like, okay, we're not even going to consider her for this position, because that was a complete turnoff. Because yeah, it was an indicator that if she was having so many problems with her boss and her current job, which sometimes happens, you still don't want to give that impression to someone that you want to work for, which is kind of in the same vein of just keeping it positive, and yeah.
Talk is for your therapist, not for a job.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting point, because one of the things about jobs is that you make it, and you can always find a positive, even if there are some pretty dark sides to it, and there's always something to learn. And I've just read an article about this recently where it's like, if you're getting paid and you have somewhere to go every day, look for the bright side wherever you are, and you never know when that, like, sometimes it's hard to have that energy. I was thinking like, wow, you like after being at work all day, then you want to go out and network, and then you're in the mood. But you know, if you can just allow yourself to have that kind of energy, then you can just open up a lot of opportunities. And when you just put a little bit out, it sort of takes on a life of its own. I'm trying to think of some great anecdotes that I mean, I've gotten great jobs from meeting people who are friends of other people or have similar interests.
I met one of your friends on campus, Mark Greenberg.
Oh yeah, that's my former boss.
Okay. So just random networking, took the opportunity to say hello to an individual outside of the gym, and it just turned
How
out that.
about that?
Yep.
And Mark considers himself the oldest person on the CSUN campus.
Yes.
But he's great. I mean, actually, he's a wonderful example of somebody who left. I worked for him at the Getty. He left the Getty under pretty kind of awful circumstances, and he was 65 at the time. And he is now getting a second master's here at CSUN in teaching English as a second language, because he was a publisher. He worked for Abrams, worked for UC Press. I mean, has a stellar career. I mean, one of the most amazing publishers, you know, like sort of one of the old gentlemen of publishing. And he wants to help people who want to write scholarly or academic treatises, but English is not their first language, so helping them do that. So he's like at 60-something reinventing himself, and it's pretty inspiring. I want to say I wanted to go into publishing when I was in college, and so I took the Stanford Publishing course, there are a number of publishing courses. Many of them are summer-long things. Stanford is really designed for working professionals, even more so now. At the time, I didn't have any experience. I kind of eked my way in, and I actually had a job offer, but I didn't have a job. And I met some people who worked at magazines that I was interested in, and became friends with them. And then the following year, they had like a reunion party mixer, and we carpooled up from LA to Palo Alto, and just sort of bonded in the car. But because we'd sort of kept in loose touch. But within a year, I was working at that magazine, and because there's something about, and it's happened to me when I've hired people, if you know someone, it really makes a difference. Or if someone speaks up, like I've gotten emails from people saying, I know this person that you're considering for the job, and I just want to tell you that they're really a great person, da 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 da. And it really has a strong effect on others.
And I have something to add to that. When you get a business card from someone, it is always a good idea to follow up with them. You can even I've sent emails just to say like, hi, I really had a great conversation with you. I hope to see you in other mixers in the future. And actually, in following up with one of my contacts, she told me about a job opening at her company, and I applied, and she referred me, and I was able to get that position because of that. But you can also make connections in other ways, like you can find financial advisors and legal help. You can hear of good people that way just by following up on the contacts.
I found more jobs probably through talking to the help. I know the help. But I've found more jobs through individuals by talking to waiters and janitors whose brothers and sisters and friends and aunts and uncles are in a field that I'm actually interested in. So that should just be business 101. Treat
Right.
everybody with the same respect you
Right.
treat your mom, provided you like your mom.
Jason.
Well, I'm just saying. I don't know people's relationships. But definitely be respectful to everybody, and in talk of taking the time and the opportunity, make sure that you take the time to network with somebody who's bringing you your food, cleaning out your trash cans.
one last example. Was on the plane coming back from my mom's surgery. Was not in the mood to talk to anybody. Was not going to talk to the person next to me in the airplane. Pulled out my iPad, ready to play Angry Birds. And the guy next to me says, "Hey, that looks familiar." Pulls out his iPad. He's like, "Hey, all right, let's share apps. What do you like? What do you like? What don't you like?" And we were sharing apps, and all of a sudden he suggested this one app because you probably will never need this. It's an app to keep family informed in case someone in your family is sick and in the hospital. It's a way to keep your family informed. I said, God, that would have been so helpful when my daughter was in the hospital. He's like, "Your daughter's in the hospital? How old is she?" And I said, 2. And I said, "Yeah." And without any prompting, he said, "Children's Hospital is the best place on this planet, blah, blah." And I start gushing about them. He's like, "Well, that's interesting." Pulls out his card. He's the vice president for ancillary and support services at Children's Hospital.
Oh my God.
This just happened. So you really just never know. And the whole iPad thing was just a great way. I don't know if he was doing it intentionally or just because he was in the mood to share apps. I don't know. But that was a really great way to kind of get a conversation started that I hadn't ever thought about. And now I do that all the time when someone else has got an iPad, wherever I am. Like, "Hey, do you have any apps that you really love that you
Oh,
want to
you
share?"
don't have an iPad?
iPhones work too. But that was just a really great way to break the ice. It was interesting. So, yeah. So now we have that in case we ever need to be back to children. That's it.
I want to touch on what Kat said. I think a lot of people think of networking as an isolated incident, like you go to this mixer for 1 hour and that's my networking power hour. But networking is more about having like that lifestyle. For example, if you go to a mixer and you get a card and you're like, "Oh, this person's never gonna help me." Like, what you have to do is get cards and follow up that night. You have to email them and say, "Hey, it was interesting talking to you." Also, so you have that reminder as if, you put on your phone, you can search your email and see how you met them and what they're about. You never know, just because they're in a different field